Cardiff, Wales, the new Millennium Stadium. As the Old Arms Park, it's a ground I've been coming to for more than 20 years. The All Blacks have been coming here since 1905. At the beginning of this year, I came to Cardiff to inspect the progress of the venue for the 1999 Rugby World Cup.
It's been said, build it and they will come. The famous Cardiff Arms Park is no more. For the staging of the 1999 Rugby World Cup finals, it's been a race against time all year here in Cardiff, Wales, for the new Millennium Stadium to be finished in time for the finals. Back home in New Zealand, for the All Blacks, it's also been a race against time this year to be ready to be here for that final on November the 6th.
While I was in Wales, John Hart brought together a squad of some 40 top players at Whanuapai for this SAS boot camp. The aim was to test their fitness and instill some of the old-fashioned military values which used to be the backbone of the more successful All Black teams of the past.
Oh, it was just the toughest thing I'll ever do. You know, it tested my mental strength, my physical strength. Took me to barriers that I didn't think could be pushed and pushed them further.
All of a sudden, playing rugby looked easy.
You know, you got to points in games where you thought, you know, I'm at the pinnacle, I can't keep running. But then you think about this boot camp and think, well, that's not even close to being the edge, you know.
There were headlines around the world when the great Jonah Lomu was dropped from the squad. Not fit enough, said Hart. The South Africans I met were staggered. If Lomu was out, then what was the secret weapon the Kiwis were going to pull out of the hat for this year's World Cup?
Well, that remains to be seen. But as the fourth World Cup approaches here in 1999, there does seem to be a similarity to what happened before the first World Cup in 1987. You see, in both years, 1986 and 1998, the All Blacks had played badly. In both years, they'd lost the Bledisloe Cup. So coming into World Cup year in both those seasons, they had a point to prove.
Keep it going, pick up that ball, tidy it up, come on, go!
1987, the inaugural World Cup was launched when the world's top 16 teams assembled in Auckland. It was a competition that's time had come. In the lead-up to the 87 World Cup, everyone, including the man himself, expected Jock Hobbs to be the All Black captain, and he made a handy start.
There was a television campaign being organised, of which I played a part in. In fact, I was the hands. You couldn't see me, but holding up the World Cup for that campaign.
Unfortunately for number 6, Jock Hobbs, he was concussed in this provincial match. Andy Dalton was the man appointed World Cup captain.
Brian Lahore just winked at me, so I knew that, you know, there was a good chance I was involved, and you know, I was thrilled to be working with him again.
But fate was to be just as unkind to Dalton. He pulled a hamstring and did not get onto the field. Enter David Kirk. The story of the 1987 World Cup was to be his story.
And Brian Lahore was right there taking the run. Sort of just said to me, I'd had no discussion with him about what if Andy can't play, but just turned to me and said, you're captain of the team on Saturday. So it was as simple as that on the playing field. I think it was relatively obvious that it would swing to me because I was leading the backs, as it were, but from then on it was just full steam ahead.
Kirk, of course, had already led the Baby Blacks the previous year, but was dropped as captain with the return of the rebel Cavaliers. Kirk was an educated All Black, a doctor of medicine and later a Rhodes Scholar. Nevertheless, the World Cup job was a big ask.
He was relatively inexperienced at that level, and I think if you asked him, he struggled earlier on, so I like to think that I helped him through some of that time. Obviously, I had a very good working relationship with Brian Lahore and generally the respect of the players, and I don't think I got in David's way. He certainly grew as the series went on.
The first challenge for Kirk was winning the confidence of some of the biggest names to ever wear the silver fern. But as Kirk himself settled into the role, confidence grew in his leadership and within the team as a whole. One try summed it up, and no, it wasn't scored by the great Michael Jones.
The Italy game,
there was one moment which stands out like a beacon for New Zealanders from that game.
I caught the kick-off, passed it to Grant Fox. We knew we were going to run it. He threw a nice long pass to John Curran, who took it running. He'd gone wide. Normally he would have been much closer. And he just ran it.
John Curran.
And he just kept running. I didn't really follow him because, I don't know, somehow I thought that he's going to do it. And so I sort of felt as if support wasn't needed. I noticed from the television that Michael Jones was right there, though. But it was just extraordinary. I was absolutely gobsmacked.
Mark the spot where he got the ball. It was well back inside his 22. So it's an 18-metre run right up the field. Remember, the All Blacks have never scored 50 points in a full-blown international. But with this run and this try, they have now.
This try, like Kirk's ascension to the captaincy itself, epitomised a dramatic development in All Black rugby.
It's a standing ovation all around the crowd.
We all of a sudden trained and coached a different way. We had completely new players. It was a young, exciting players. We were going to play the game differently. We trained differently. And our results, all of a sudden, we just went from an All Black team that used to win games by 3 points or 6 points. Kicks here, we were winning points by 30 and 40 points. We were trouncing teams.
The teams they trounced included Italy and Fiji, and then came Argentina. This game should have spelled the end of Kirk's World Cup, if not his entire rugby career.
A high one from Porter. Kirk gets the man and down goes David Kirk.
That's send-off. That's a send-off offence. That is disgusting, disgraceful.
Under today's rulings, and actually I think under the rulings of the day, if it had been known that I'd been actually knocked unconscious, I would have been stood down for 3 weeks.
The match is over. David Kirk is groggy.
Took the risk.
And there's David Kirk heading for the dressing room. Dr. Bill Treadwell, the doctor for today, looking anxiously after him down the corridor. Fitzpatrick.
The All Blacks went into the quarter-final wearing white to distinguish themselves from the navy blue of Scotland. They also distinguished themselves on the scoreboard, easily winning 30-3.
Kirk frees it. Fox. Long ball to Stanley. And Gallagher is in under the posts.
A week later, they travelled to Brisbane, where they thrashed their old rivals, Wales, 49-6. The win propelled them into the historic first-ever World Cup final against France at Eden Park.
There's a real sense of, here's our opportunity, we can be the best in the world. And don't wake up tomorrow morning having missed this opportunity. You're definitely good enough, this team is good enough, we've played well enough. We're good enough to be the world champions. Don't let it slip.
One of the men on the field that day hadn't been seen during the semi-final. Michael Jones, the man who doesn't play on Sundays, was making a welcome return.
I can only with a laugh looking at in the terraces there was this big sign up that had thank you God for playing the final on a Saturday, so Michael could play, you know, Michael Jones fan club.
At half-time, the score was just 9-0. The cup was far from a certainty.
Kirk. Oh, that's the little move that they do so well together.
And that first half was quite a slog, really. I wasn't happy at half-time. I remember very distinctly what I talked to the team about at half-time. It was not about the joy of winning. It was about the grind of winning test matches. It was about hard work.
Kirk calls it. Fitzpatrick throws it. These are the big men.
And that hard work was about to pay off big time, especially for the young All Black captain, David Kirk.
And just after the second half, they had a penalty which would have got them if they'd kicked it within, I think, 12-9 or something like that. And they were playing with the slight breeze. It was the first and only moment in that World Cup final where I thought, this is going to be close. If they kick this is going to be a real down-to-the-wire match. But they missed it. We went back down on attack.
Jones had a hand in it too. Then the little rolling pass inside. And the All Black captain makes his day.
My try was that moment, absolute feeling of, we're going to win. We're going to be the world champions. So it wasn't the final whistle for me. It was that moment when we scored the try and I remember pounding the earth saying, we've done it. We're going to win. We're going to be the world champions.
As the minutes ticked away, one man was sitting on the reserves bench, hoping against hope that something terrible, but not too terrible would befall his young replacement, Sean Fitzpatrick.
During the game, old Fitzy pulled a couple of injuries on me that I'll never forgive him for this, because I got quite excited that I was going to get a run. And I thought, well, maybe he's been told to give me a couple of minutes at the end. But I should know better with Fitzy. There's no way he's ever going to do that. I wouldn't have either in his position.
Back in the play.
Not only had young Fitzy replaced Dalton as hooker, the replacement captain was playing a blinder as well. Kirk had already scored one try himself, and then this.
Oh, I don't believe it! McEwen has scored!
The game had been won, and David Kirk had emerged as a national hero. But it was to be a bittersweet moment for the man he'd replaced.
So I was in the changing room probably feeling sorry for myself and quite happy that every intention of sitting it out down there. And but Brian Hall grabbed me and threw me up the front and took me up the stairs and out the front.
Having a stick and pulling him over was just very spontaneous, but I think it had been building up through his kind of very humble but significant contribution to the team. And, you know, it was kind of enough humility from you, Guy. Come and accept the cup along with the rest of us, because you've made a very significant contribution.
You can see it in his facial reaction. He's almost like he looks like he doesn't want to be there because of his modesty.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it.
And that's a great shot. Andy Dalton, who couldn't take part in the matches, and I think there might just be a tear in the eye.
And it was a great gesture of David's at the end, and certainly a pretty emotional time, that's for sure.
The close-up cameras didn't quite exist in those days like they do now. But was there a tear in the eye when you came forward to take the cup?
Yeah, my eyesight's failing, Quinny. I'm not sure about that, but pretty emotional time, yeah.
91, the second World Cup was here in Britain.
Michael Jones, first try of the tournament.
The 1991 World Cup campaign is the story of the man who was to cop the blame, Coach Alex Wiley. The opening game pitted the All Blacks against England at Twickenham. But despite the success of this first game, the All Blacks were in trouble and they knew it. And the Australians seemed to have sensed something in the air months earlier as well.
A year before the final of the World Cup, I rang a few of the players, notably Nick Farr-Jones, and said, you better get a bottle of champagne tonight and have a drink, mate. And he said, why? And I said, well, if we do things right, 12 months from today, we could just win this thing.
The All Blacks were the defending champions, but they were soon to learn it's one thing to win the title, another to defend it. And some of the senior hands, like Sean Fitzpatrick, seemed to sense something was wrong even before they left home.
And I think maybe we didn't want to win it, you know, in terms of our attitude, approach to training, the pressure of being the world champions for 4 years had sort of got to us, I think. And we probably thought we were better than what we were.
And these worries must have been picked up on because the rugby union made one of its most controversial decisions ever when it appointed John Hart as co-coach to Alex Wiley. This marriage made in hell was the result of complaints made about Wiley by several senior players.
Well, we had a certain representation from the players and expressing concern, and we just had to do something about it.
A players' revolt against Wiley?
It wasn't so much a players' revolt, but it was them expressing concern that things weren't as tidy as they should be. And as council, we tried to address that situation. It was very late in the day because the World Cup was round the corner, and we felt that we just had to do something to sort of appease the players and make the best of what was available.
Looking back, it's hard to see how retaining Wiley and appointing Hart could possibly appease the players. It could only make matters worse, and it did. Alex Wiley believes to this day there was a concerted campaign by the rugby union bosses to undermine him. And it wasn't just the Hart appointment. Even before they left New Zealand, there was the Brewer incident. Mike Brewer was central to Alex Wiley's game plan, but Brewer was still on the mend from a serious foot injury. When it came to the final fitness test for the World Cup squad, Brewer failed. Wiley was furious at the way Brewer was dropped.
Tell me why Mike Brewer had to go and have a medical, and he was told not to worry about taking the special mould that he had. And then he was told he had to do some of these exercises. He said, look, if I do that, he said, I'm going to blow it. Now, I know that some other players had their ankles strapped and everything else as well, and did it every training run. We go to the next World Cup when some of the players couldn't even play in the first game. Why was Mike Brewer made to stay behind?
So, Grizz, I've only been following the game 25 years, but I'm not sure who you're talking about here. Are you, that stopped Brewer going on this?
Well, I think Eddie Tonks had a lot to do with it. But he will deny it, but I mean, through reasons, he was asked, we rang him up, and he just said straight out, well, if Mike failed, he can't go.
Cheers, Mike.
Hang on a minute, will you? No, he's not available.
No comment.
No, he's no comment.
I think I copped the blame for a lot of things from Alex during that period. The council had made it a clear decision that anyone unfit couldn't travel. And he was adjudged unfit by the medical panel. The manager, John Sturgeon, called me and told me, and that was it as far as I was concerned. There was absolutely no personality involved as far as I was concerned. I'd love Mike to have gone. I think he was a great player, but if he wasn't fit, that was council policy.
Breaking an 8-year silence on the controversy, Grizz Wiley told me this year that he felt so betrayed. Just before leaving for the 1991 World Cup, he took the hardest decision of his career. He told team manager John Sturgeon he was going to resign.
Yeah, well, I mean, it hurts, that sort of thing. I mean, I'll be honest, when Mike Brewer and I went to Sturgeon, I said, well, forget me. I said, I'm out. Finished. He said, well, if you do that, I'll do it. And I said, no, there's no need for you.
You said you'd pull out of the cup?
Yes. And he said, don't do that, please. Because you're letting the players down. But, yeah, I mean, looking back on it now, perhaps it might have been better the other way around. I don't know.
You mean it might have been better if you'd pulled out?
Mm.
Wiley did not resign. He bit the bullet and went to Britain. But there the stress continued to pile up. He had the unenviable task of defending the world title with a co-coach he didn't want. He was without a key player he did want, and he had to cope with a number of senior players who didn't want him. Wiley was clearly a man with the troubles of the world on his shoulders, and rumours about his drinking, first aired during the 1990 Tour of France, resurfaced.
Oh, look, yeah. Well, let's go back to the French tour again. I was told afterwards, when sometime later, that I hadn't been able to make a training run. Absolutely ridiculous. I mean, that was the sort of thing that I was talking about. The things were going on and behind. Stories were being said about this, that, and the other thing. Totally untrue.
So you're confident you can tell historically the rugby story of your time that your concentration was 100%?
100% to the extent that I didn't detract anything away from the players. Perhaps there might have been times when I went out, but not taking anything away from what I was doing for the team.
The team was struggling in a lot of ways, you know. It wasn't a happy team. Not a happy team, it's hard to get results, you know. We had a hard and very arduous tour of Argentina, which, in hindsight, we didn't need. But we got through it. It left more question marks than answers, I think.
The World Cup, 1991. The All Blacks getting ready to play Australia in the semi-final of that series. And there's an indication of the mood that was in that All Black team. As they left the plush Barclay Court Hotel here in suburban Dublin to get on their bus to travel to the Lansdowne Road ground, hundreds of New Zealand supporters who travelled right across the world to back the team were gathered here in the forecourt. But the All Black team came out of the hotel and with heads down, they got on their bus and completely snubbed their Kiwi support.
But I don't think any team travelling to a test, you don't start waving out the window and that sort of thing. I mean, if your concentration's built up and you want to achieve, you shouldn't. I mean, a lot of players probably say, look, I wouldn't have known whether there were people on the side of the road or where they were. How many people were at the game? You didn't count them. Was there much noise? You don't hear the noise.
The All Blacks were perceived as being up themselves, being very insular, and yeah, just basically being big heads.
By the time of the semi-final, this anti-All Black sentiment in Dublin was rampant. The Irish crowd were cheering for the underdog Australian team, despite the fact that Australia had beaten their own team just the week before. Any other All Black team would have risen above the obstacles, but this dysfunctional All Black side couldn't do anything right. Not even beat a struggling bunch of Aussies.
I don't know, we weren't playing that well in the World Cup leading up to that. We'd only just scraped through against Western Samoa. We just scraped through against Ireland the week before when we scored in the last sort of 2 minutes to win that game. And I don't know, but we just went out there with incredible confidence against New Zealand.
Oh, brilliant score by David Campese. Campese! Horrid! Another magic try for Australia.
And the World Cup champions of 1987 are out. And Australia will go to Twickenham to play England next Saturday.
What was your reaction at the end of that game against Australia? Did you feel like that was the end of the world?
No, suddenly you realise that, yeah, the World Cup ambition had come to an end. That was it, finish. A lot of players stayed behind because of an opportunity, so we came back in dribs and drabs, and that's probably a bit like the team may have been during the World Cup.
The All Blacks have finished third at the 1991 Rugby World Cup.
From world champions to this, if you think coming second doesn't rate very highly for an All Black, you can imagine how coming third felt. It was all over the faces of the few team members who dribbled home. At the end of the 1991 World Cup, Alex Wiley was out. He never coached the All Blacks again.